Welcome. Microsoft would like to record this call so that the recording may be shared with global call participants or others who are not able to attend today, including service providers, customers, partners, and others at Microsoft. The recording may include your voice, image, and/or chat comments. If you don't agree, please drop this call and listen to this as a follow-up recording. If you do agree, please continue staying on. Hello and welcome back to the Microsoft Security for Software Development Companies series. We're excited to have our 7th session for the series, Safeguard Data Security and Privacy in AI-Driven Applications. This series is tailored specifically for software development companies, although in some ways the principles cover beyond software companies, diving deep into unique challenges and opportunities in securing your applications. In the previous episode, we talked about enhanced threat detection and monitoring AI solutions, where we learned about advanced techniques for detecting and monitoring security risks in AI-driven applications, including real-time threat intelligence and anomaly detection. Today, we'll gain insights into implementing robust data security and privacy measures for AI-powered solutions, ensuring compliance, and creating trusted app experiences for your customers. Thank you for joining us on this journey to help improve your security posture. Before we get started, let's cover the logistics quickly. This event offers live captions in multiple languages. Here's how to enable them. Go to Language and Speech in your Teams settings. Select Show Live Captions and choose your preferred language. For the best experience, ensure you're using the Teams desktop client. We will also have Q&A session at the end to address any questions you may have in the meantime. Ask away your questions by using the Q&A button. Allow me to introduce the presenters today. My name is Daphne Chong. I'm a partner solution architect based out of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I look after partners in the Asia region. I'm here today as your webinar host. I have the pleasure of introducing Carl Marsh, Principal Product Manager of Microsoft Entra. He is an experienced manager with demonstrated history of working in the computer software industry. He has strong program and project management professional skills in platform and evangelism, partner management, application programming interface, and mobile applications. He works with developers to best optimize for the Microsoft Identity Platform, Microsoft Entra. Vic Pradana is my colleague based out of Melbourne, Australia. He has over a decade of technical leadership and he bridges engineering innovations with real-world business outcomes through AI, cloud-native development, and open source. As a software development company app dev architect and startup mentor, Vic empowers teams and startups to build scalable, transformative solutions on Microsoft Azure. Here's our agenda for today. We'll cover 3 essential topics to help you design your products with security in mind. We'll start with the introduction and context to the series by setting the stage with an overview of the Microsoft Security for Software Development Companies series. This will include insights into the purpose of the series and how it empowers software companies to prioritize security throughout your product design lifecycle. The main content would be the privacy and security in AI. And in this segment, I'll hand over to Vic and Carl to explore with us how to implement robust data security and privacy measures tailored to AI applications, from handling user data responsibly to meeting regulatory requirements and mitigating risks. Finally, we'll have time at the end for questions and answers. Cyber threats have grown 5 times, and the cybersecurity landscape is evolving at an unprecedented pace. And these numbers tell a concerning story. 340 million cybercriminal and nation-state attacks happen every day, underscoring the speed of these threats. Password attacks have surged, climbing from 4,000 per second in 2023 to 7,000 per second in 2024, showcasing the sheer scale of the problem. Microsoft now tracks over 1,500 threat actors, a significant leap from 300 in 2023, reflecting the growing sophistication of adversaries. These trends highlight why prioritizing security is no longer optional. As a software development company, it's critical to adapt and stay ahead of these challenges. With that in mind, let's introduce the Security for Software Development Companies series. We have some links on the slide, so please check out the links for our entire series information. The era of artificial intelligence has revolutionized the way software companies operate. From enabling cutting-edge solutions to driving digital transformation, AI has unlocked immense opportunities for innovation. However, this progress has come with a price. The complexity and frequency of cybersecurity threats are at an all-time high. To help software companies navigate these challenges, we're excited to introduce this series, a comprehensive collection of webinars designed to provide software companies with the tools, insights, and strategies needed to enhance your security posture in today's rapidly evolving threat landscape. It's also a forum where we learn and share together on security and specific challenges and lessons learned from software companies. So check out our links for the recording as well as upcoming episodes. We have come up with 10 episodes in the series with the aim of to capture real-world challenges for software development companies when building and securing your applications. As you meet the increasing demand from your customers, AI presents unique and new challenges in addressing the new threats. So we'll cover not only the fundamentals, but also the AI era security. Additionally, software companies work a lot with marketplace, so we aim to bring important aspects from a security perspective when you publish your solution to our commercial marketplace. You can find all this info on our landing page and blog. On this page, I'd like to introduce you to the team behind the initiative. Everyone on this screen plays a pivotal role in the launch of the series. And now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over the session to my colleagues, Carl Marsh and Vic Pradana.
Okay. Hey, thanks for the intro. I was at Build a few weeks ago, and one of the most common questions I got as people came up to our booth where we talked about, securing AI and governance and such was, hey, my IT department says I can't do anything with AI. My IT department says, they're not going to turn anything on. I can't go anything near it. How can you help me? How can you make it so that my IT department will agree that I can do some AI work? This is a concern that we see across the industry, where businesses are quite concerned about what level of sharing, what level of control do they have, what's their exposure, etc., to the various AI solutions that are out there. And of course, Microsoft found this ourselves, right? As we started to roll out Copilot, lots of customers, lots of that were worried. Hey, how much is this? Is this a possible leak? Are these things going to get out? How are you controlling it, and so on? So in Microsoft's case, we decided to extend Microsoft Purview, which was already handling data security and governance across lots of different solutions at Microsoft. You could have it apply to Teams, you can have it apply to your email, etc., and extend that into the world of AI. So we create our data security and posture management for AI. And the nice thing here is that as a developer, I can build effectively on this so that I don't have to have a lot of work that I have to put in order to really assure my customers and maybe the folks in my own company that the AI solution I'm putting in place is governable. It is monitored. You can control that AI solution. Lots of solutions out there can do some pretty straightforward. Hey, if it's got this phrase in it, or it's got this term, maybe you can put in some elementary blocking. But where you lose is the ability for an IT department to be able to come in and say, I need to see a full picture of all of the AI activity that's going on in my tenant. I need to be able to put controls in place, maybe well after your application has been created. Hey, I need to add these additional controls. I want these additional reporting. I need to be able to play this into my e-discovery, or I need to worry about my communication compliance and so on. Purview already has all of that capability. So by being able to connect to what Microsoft's already built for Microsoft Purview, which handles all of the Copilot traffic, by the way. So here you can see not only are we handling things like, well, what activity is happening inside of Copilot, what sensitive information might be happening inside of Copilot prompts and responses, but you can see other applications as well. Google Gemini, OpenAI ChatGPT, even custom applications. All of these applications can be seen by the IT folks. They can see what's going on. They can monitor and govern it from this one spot. So the nice thing here is there's a whole bunch of richness in this solution that I, as a developer, really don't need to worry about. Right? I can let my IT folks or the customer's IT folks, who've already invested in things like how do I control Teams, how do I control email, etc. They've already invested in that. They've already built their infrastructure. They have these policies in place about what's sensitive in their organization. Maybe they've created their own personal ones or just for their company. Right? So the nice thing is I can build or link into this, and I don't have to worry about creating or duplicating any of this functionality myself because it's already built into the solution they're running, which is Microsoft Purview. Now, what does it mean for you as an application developer to do this? Well, the nice thing is it's a pretty straightforward process. So I have a little desktop app here. We're going to use this to take a look at the process that you would use in order to integrate and build on top of Microsoft Purview. Right. The nice thing is, primarily, we're looking as application developers creating GenAI solutions. We're looking at providing data into that Purview system. Right. I don't need to worry about reporting or how to classify things or so on. All I'm really going to do here is I'm going to provide data as an input source effectively, and I'm going to respond to any actions that Purview tells me to do with respect to the activity that I'm generating. So the first thing I have to do as a developer is I do have to know who the user is. This is all based on the user having a Microsoft 365 E5 license, right? So I need to know who the user is because that's going to be part of how we're going to talk to Microsoft Purview. So in this case, I'll go ahead and sign in. And since I have this desktop app, I'll sign in using the authentication broker. The nice thing about using an authentication broker in this scenario is the user is never impacted. It simply automatically does my single sign-on. I don't have to worry about them typing in their credentials or MFAs or anything because it's all happening, excuse me, because they have already authenticated into the operating system. Now, the first call I have to make as a GenAI application developer who's going to integrate into Purview for my governance and protection is something called protection scopes. I have to compute the protection scopes for this user, or we're going to ask Purview to do that for us. So these are Microsoft Graph APIs. So today they're available in beta. They'll soon be available in the V1 published node as well. So they're Microsoft Graph APIs. So As with any Microsoft Graph API, I do need to get permission. In this case, I need protectionscopes.compute.user to be allowed for this application to be used, to be able to make this a call to find out when and why would my application need to call Purview. So generally, my customer or my enterprise will decide. Maybe they only want prompts handled. Maybe they only want responses, or maybe they want both. Maybe they just want to know about the prompts and responses, but maybe they also want the ability to say, oh, I want to be able to block and prevent, or maybe require different actions to happen before the activity can continue. So maybe they want to block a particular prompt or response because it has content that they don't want to see going in or out of the AI systems. So we as a developer, we need to find out when and why do we need to call Microsoft Purview, depending upon what the customer has decided. So we're going to call this compute protection scopes compute function. It just takes a little JSON blob here that lets us filter and ask Purview to do some work for us. In this case, I'm going to say my application can send and receive to my AI. In other words, I have prompts or upload text, and I get responses from my AI and download text. So I use these APIs because I have access to the prompt before it goes from the user to the AI, or I have access to the response. So before the AI response is presented to the user, I can have access to that. That way, in case the enterprise, the customer, wants to have any blocking functionality, then I can do that. So I have to have access to the prompts and responses between the user and the AI system that you're using. So in this case, we'll go ahead and we'll send our request to Microsoft Graph, and we'll get back something we call a protection scope collection. This is, again, telling me when and why I should call Microsoft Graph. So the first thing is I get an array of these back, these protection scopes back. And the first one I'll look at is saying, well, given the activities for upload text and download text, in other words, for prompts and responses, you do need to call Microsoft Purview. So we say our execution mode, the fact that it even exists, by the way, that I have an activity the value came back, that means I will be calling Purview for prompts and responses. The execution mode of evaluate offline tells me that I don't need to wait to hear back from Purview. This is effectively a report-only mode that's being asked in this case. So I will send my prompts and responses, but I don't need to wait for the answer. I can just send them and immediately move on or do in parallel the call to Microsoft Purview for what the company has configured. So that's my first response here. The first value I get back is, yes, for my prompts and responses, I can evaluate offline. But I have another scope that's also here. In this case, it actually says, hey, for upload text or for prompts, so this is a complementary rule, if you will, or complementary policy scope, protection scope, in that they build on each other. The first one says effectively is set up a baseline. For my prompts and responses, everything goes to Purview, but I don't have to wait. But the second one says, well, actually, for prompts, upload text, the execution mode we need is evaluate inline. What this means is your application needs to wait or block until it gets the answer from Purview. So the company, or the customer in this case, has configured their tenant to say, I would like Purview to see all of the prompts before they're sent from the user to the AI. And depending upon the policies that I have configured, it's possible that Purview will ask the application to block that request. So in this case, we're blocking for the user until we get the answer from Purview. So that's our first step. We call these protection scopes so that we find out when and why to call Microsoft Purview. Now, as I notice here, in my response, I'm also going to get a header that's the e-tag header. This is something I'm going to build on as well, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this e-tag header back whenever I process a message, a prompt or a response. And then based on what the value of the e-tag and the current state of the policies that the customer has configured or the company has configured, we might be asked to call protection scopes again, right? So I might have to go and get new protection scopes because, oh, look, the company has changed. Now they don't want the prompts evaluated inline. Now they want the responses evaluated inline, or maybe they don't want prompts anymore. They might change their policies, in which case you would need to refresh the rules. When and why are you calling Purview by calling our protection scopes compute again? So I'm going to take this e-tag header, I'm going to cache it away for this user, and I'm going to use it on subsequent calls to Microsoft Purview. So let's do one of those calls now. So let's go ahead and start a conversation. So this is quite dependent on exactly how the nature of your application solution is. In things like Microsoft Copilot, we have these idea of sessions, where a user can start a session and then the context of that session builds on itself. But if I start a new session, that context does not go into the next session. Some applications refer to these as threads. So if I start a new thread where I have a certain context, if you will, of the messages, I would start I'm going to call an API called process content, for which I need the content.process.user scope in Microsoft Graph. And in this case, I'm going to create a new conversation or thread or session by creating a new correlation ID value. So you can send just a GUID here to identify uniquely, here is this new thread. Here's an identifier that Purview can use to say, here's a new session, a new thread. And then within that, I can generate a sequence number that's telling me or telling Purview the order of the messages as they come and go. So this was the first one. It's usually obviously a prompt, but we'll start with that sequence number. These two values in combination have to be unique, right? So in order to make sure I keep advancing the thread or advancing the context, if you will, then I would go ahead and keep advancing the sequence number within this particular correlation ID. So this metadata is some information that Purview needs to help make sure that we're getting all the context in which these requests or prompts and responses are being made. I provide a unique identifier for each message, each call to process content. That way we can debug, we can trace and find out what's happened. I have a little bit of information about the name of my app and some more metadata. What's really key here is the activity metadata, because that tells Purview exactly what this activity is. Maybe it's a prompt, maybe it's a response. Well, if it's a prompt, my activity is upload text. If it's a response, then my activity will become a download text. And then just other information about the environment and the application, etc., in which this conversation or this AI interaction is taking place. And of course, one really important part is the content itself. So here we have added the content. So this is the body, if you will, or the text of the prompt that the user entered. So we'll go ahead and send that request to Microsoft Graph. And in this case, Microsoft Graph has come back with a response. Oh, I should mention that in the header here, I included the if none matched header, which has the value of that e tag I received back when I called protection scopes. And then I can see that the first thing I get back from process content call is, hey, your scope state hasn't changed. So I know I don't need to call or refresh my protection scopes again, at least not at this point, because they haven't been modified. The next thing I see that is I do get an array or a collection of policy actions. And in this case, there is something in that policy action. Specifically, the action of, it's a restriction. So the DLP action that we're doing is to restrict access. And in specifically, this particular restriction is this action needs to be blocked. So having gotten that response from Purview, then I would turn around and tell the user, sorry, your company policy prevents you from sending that prompt to your AI system. So in this case, Purview has stepped in because of the protection scope policy that said evaluate inline, the execution mode for prompts, upload text, was evaluate inline. Then because of the content of this message, Purview has said this cannot be sent to the AI. So your application would not send it. Now, the reason for this is I actually created a policy in this tenant that specifically doesn't allow credit card numbers to be sent to AI. And since I have a credit card number in this particular request, it got blocked. If I were to just generate a new request, so we have a new correlation ID and sequence number, so we don't want to overwrite the old one, but I'll delete from this request this time the credit card number, and we'll send that request. Now, in this case, since the policy is block any prompts that have credit card numbers from moving on, there's no problem this time. There's no need for a policy action. I get back an empty list, which simply means I can go ahead and send that prompt back off to the AI. So here you can see that when you're asked to evaluate inline, that there's a possible data loss prevention action that could take place, in which case you would then have your application respond to that. And then we just continue this mode as we move down the track here. So the next step, of course, is, well, let's continue the same conversation, but in this case, let's have a response. Right. So here I don't need to change the data much. Obviously, I have all new content, right? Because now I've got the content that's coming from AI before it gets to the user. So I can send that content, that response to Microsoft Purview. And the only other thing I need to change, obviously, I know of an additional sequence number. The sequence is moved up one, which is what you would expect. And in this case, I change my activity to be download. In other words, this is a response. The rest of the metadata about the device and where the request is coming from, what the application is, that's all going to be the same. And of course, I can send this request. There is no blocking policy. In fact, our protection scope said evaluate offline. Our execution mode for responses was evaluate offline. So I don't need to wait. I can just send this, fire and forget, if you will, because it's not going to ask us to take any actions on that policy. And then this process just continues as the user continues with their prompts and responses. I continue to send them back and forth back to Purview. In this case, it's a prompt. It will need to be awaited so that we can find out if it has any action that needs to be applied. Again, I've incremented the sequence number, and I've changed the activity, of course, now to be a prompt. And we can go off and we can send that request. Now, those two APIs, protection scopes and process content, are the two primary APIs you need to call in order to have the ability for the company to set up, the customer to set up, hey, I want to have these particular types inspected by Purview. Perhaps I want them to be blocked. Perhaps I have other actions I might want to apply in the future. But for me, at the application development stage, I don't have to worry about all of the richness that are out there for defining a new sensitive info type and defining, what all these policies and who they apply to. And I don't have to create a bunch of UI around this policy only applies to people in this group, or this policy applies to everyone in that group except these individuals. I don't have to do any of that kind of work. It's all handled already for me inside of Purview. So all I need to do is make these calls to these APIs. Here's one other option, by the way. If when I called protection scopes, I got nothing back, supposing that the list of, hey, you don't need to call Purview because the customer or the company hasn't configured anything, I could optionally call what we call content activity. Now, content activity is very similar to the call we make for process content. Obviously, it's a new operation, so it needs contact activity.write permission. and a different endpoint that we're going to our content activity endpoint here. The real difference here is that when I call content activity, there is no content in the metadata. There's just the fact that the user is here, they're having a session. This is the first or second or third or whatever it is message in the conversation. Was it a prompt or response? So the metadata is the same structure, same object, just doesn't have the content in it. And obviously I can send that request. And what happens there is the activity is there. We'll see how it could go into, it can be seen and monitored. Obviously it can't be blocked because we're not even sending back the prompts and responses, but it does help the company keep track of what users, which users are using which UI and when, and so on. So it does help with their auditability, if they want to have that. So there's another option, is to call content activities, where we send the fact that the user is interacting with the AI without actually providing the content that's traveling back and forth. So the net result of this is really more for the IT admin folks. Now, I will point out here that what we see here is a bunch of activity I have here from my Copilot interactions earlier today. So for example, if I look down here, I can see that I had a sensitive info type that happened with a Copilot interaction, because if I look at the related activities, it is going to say that, the prompt I was making was, hey, I want a summary of financial news today. So that kicked off the fact that we're in cryptocurrency. It kicked off a sensitive info type around the fact that I was doing finance. So this is where I would come as an IT pro who wants to find out what's activity is going on with the users here in their all of the Copilots across Microsoft. But here, as you can see here under my enterprise AI apps, now these were done a little earlier, but they're much the same responses that we looked at earlier today. So let's look at this. Let's start here, I think. And here are interactions from my application that's calling these Purview APIs in Microsoft Graph. So here I can see much the same information. Here's the prompt that happened. Oh, this prompt sent off a sensitive info type, and that there's some security number option, possibly. There's certainly credit card numbers. And then as I go through the rules here, I can see that actually this interaction set off my credit card sensitive info type, and therefore it was blocked. Right. So as an IT folks, as an IT organization, I have all of this richness, the ability to check, find out what's happening, control what's going on in my enterprise. I even have a nice chart up here that gives you an idea of how many times, for example, how many rule matches we had for DLP, where the data loss prevention prevented in this case, the prompts from going to the AI. So I have all of this functionality, which is great, and the IT pros can do anything they want here. The nice thing is this does allow a lot of flexibility for them. Purview is a very rich solution. They can do data loss prevention, they can do communication compliance, e-discovery, all kinds of things that they need to do either because of regulation or just because they're doing and trying to get a handle on what activity is going on in their tenant. And I didn't have to develop any of this, right? I didn't have to provide a way for, hey, these are the actions your users took, and here they are that you can report on them, and I'll provide all the categorization and all of these things. I don't have to do any of that code. All I need to do is call those in the 3 different APIs we looked at so far in the Microsoft Purview APIs that are inside of Microsoft Graph. So it's a really easy way for me to be able to provide a very rich capability with respect to governance and monitoring of the AI activity in my application to those customers that are using Microsoft Purview at a very low cost for me, because the only thing I have to do is call these handful of Microsoft Graph APIs. And I do have to authenticate with Microsoft Entra, so there is that. But I don't have to do any of the other things. I don't have to create a way for them to create for my customer to create a custom sensitive info type that's, specially there to be able to make sure that the activity against my top secret project doesn't go in and out of AI. Well, they can do all of that richness of creating it in Purview, and all I have to do is call these APIs. So it's a very straightforward process for you as an application developer to be able to provide this capability, because mostly you're just relying on Microsoft Purview to provide the bulk or the heavy lifting here, and you have a very straightforward task of calling these APIs in Microsoft Graph. So Vic, back to you, or I think we're going to do some questions, whatever you'd like.
Thank you very much, Carl. That was amazing. Really insightful overview of how Microsoft Purview helps secure AI apps. This is really practical as well, because one of the things that a lot of ISVs are kind of trying to scramble around penetrating enterprise is building that trust AI solutions, and data compliance, data protection is always they're always concerned for CEOs, CTOs, CISOs on big companies. So this is amazing. I have just couple of maybe more a couple more questions around the integration and how easy it is to integrate with Microsoft Purview. And I realized Microsoft Build recently announced this SDK, and this is probably part of it. Do you know whether this is already in GA or close to GA, or is it currently in preview? And how does ISV can take advantage of that?
Right. So the Purview, these APIs are part of Microsoft Graph. They are covered by the Microsoft Graph SDKs as well, of course. And they're currently in the beta path, or the beta branch of the Microsoft Graph APIs. But there will be, so there were what we would consider, I guess, public preview. They're in beta. You can build on them today. You can, get your feet wet, figure out how to use them, and so on. And I expect that they'll move to be GA relatively soon. It shouldn't be very long before these are available in GA.
Amazing. Yeah, you showed an example on how easy it is to just query a couple of endpoints to basically integrate with with Purview, and effectively the IT department can centralize their policies and can easily onboard. To say we run some sort of hypothetical app. So say I'm an ISV, I've got a custom AI application. Is could be a chatbot or some sort of assistant that I build using my custom tooling. It could be, I don't know, AI Foundry or Copilot Studio. Are there any kind of integrations that make it easier for ISV to integrate with Purview with those tooling?
So if you're building on those Microsoft tools, if you're building on Copilot Studio, there's really no work you need to do. The integration is being done inside of that tool. So if you build on Copilot Studio, the integration that you see, the calling of Purview, etc., is all automatic. There's no work for you to have to do. If you're using AI Foundry, the default is the ability for your application to effectively support evaluate offline, and that again happens automatically. So it happens in a layer between your call, and you send it off to the AI model. At that layer, we can automatically send the prompts and responses, if it's configured that way, obviously in the tenant, to Purview, so that they can see and report and monitor the activity that's going on. So that's the automatic part of Azure AI Foundry. If your application and your customer or your company wants to say, no, I need to have the ability to block and not just report, but I need to have the blocking capability, at that point you will need to come and start calling these APIs directly instead.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense, and that's good. And we have like a predefined sort of paths for ISVs to integrate, which is great. you kind of showed examples around, data security, using credit card numbers and so on, the policies. Um, there's kind of issues around oversharing and accidental data exposure. How customizable the policy is, so that Purview can sort of track maybe certain terms or maybe certain company data or anything like that.
Yeah, Purview, the nice thing is I don't have to build any of this myself, but yes, Purview has a tremendous wealth of capabilities here. So for example, if I were to look at the data loss prevention capability, that's the part where we're blocking. I can look here and I can see that there's a bunch of built-in policies anyway. But as I create a policy, I have the capability of let me just start with a custom policy. I have a lot of capabilities here. For example, I could, if Entra has this concept of admin units, I can say I only want it to go to one particular admin unit. I can say what kind of devices or what kind of what we refer to as locations, teams, etc. We're waiting for the UI to be updated for our custom apps. But here you can see this is why they're already managing things like, hey, what's on in Teams or what have you, right? So, and then once I get to these policies, I have a lot of flexibility in terms of, well, which condition do I want these to apply to, right? And
Yeah.
there's a tremendous amount of richness here. I
Yeah.
won't go through any more, but there's a tremendous amount of richness. They could create custom sensitive types. They can decide which exact sensitive types they want, which policy to apply to, which users, which groups. There's a tremendous amount of capability here.
Amazing. Yeah. And if I understand it correctly, say, that IC builds an app, they not necessarily need to know all of the policies
Nope,
there.
they don't.
It's all,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's all abstracted in the call to protection scopes, right? So what I
Yeah.
end up with here, right, is an abstraction of all of the policies that are out there. I don't know what they are. I kind of don't care, frankly.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
prompts and responses. Call Purview or don't, right, depending upon what the policy says. In this case, prompts and responses. Call Purview. Don't wait. Oh, for prompts, wait. There could be a half dozen policies that went into all of these. And remember, we're doing all of this because we know who the user is. So when you call the Microsoft Graph API with a delegated permission token, we know who the user is. In this case, it's Kyle from this tenant. So we know which policies apply to Kyle as opposed to which ones might apply to Vic, right?
Amazing.
So
Yeah.
that's all of that work's done for you. You don't have to go through and look at all the policies and do all of that. It's already abstracted away by me just calling these APIs.
Great. You made it so attractive that I wanted to try it out. So without further ado, around the segue on kind of the resources on how we can get started. What would be your go-to page or article that we should go
So
to?
I'll sign out here just so I can get to this page quickly. We have some Purview documentation. It's got some links for you that you can use. Specifically, as I said, we're part of Microsoft Graph, but this has, for example, our link to our samples, some how to set up the tenant or configure things in the tenant, just enough for the developer. This is not an extensive, hey, these are all the features of Purview. It's like, as a developer, what's the minimum I need to do so I can get my work done and test? That's all we're doing here. We're not going to get into the myriad of richness that Purview provides, as well as, how do I get, so then we'll get you to the Microsoft Graph. Here's our Purview APIs in Microsoft Graph, and that's really where our the heart and soul of our docs are all, of course, in Microsoft Graph because we're part of the Microsoft Graph APIs and covered by their SDKs and so on. But the first place to go is that SDK page where you can get the links and get to these access a little easier.
Amazing.
So I'll go
Yeah.
ahead
Thanks very much,
drop
Carl.
them.
Yeah, we'll drop those links in the show notes
Yeah.
as well, so that people can
And
go ahead
I'm
and
also,
take a look.
this sample, by the way, I've done a little tweaking to it in the last couple of days to add the little doc page reference. But this is here in our Purview samples. So we have a Postman collection for people who just like to work with Postman. And we have this desktop sample that I've been running here. It's just a .NET app you can just spin up and run. And it's as we saw, going now has these links so that if I'm running the application and let's say I want to maybe I'm calling my my protection scopes or want to do that, we can click here, take you to the right doc page, and you can go through and read the rest of the Microsoft Graph docs.
That's epic. That's good. Yeah, thank you again, Gal. I think that's the examples, especially, that will make it a lot easier for ISVs to get started. So yeah, thanks for sharing those insights, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. Really, pretty much securing AI isn't really optional. It's a competitive advantage, and building that trust is key in many cases as we enter kind of more AI-driven applications in enterprises. So yeah, stay connected for more sessions coming on. And thank you, Carl, for coming on to the series.
You bet. Thanks, Vic. Appreciate it.
As we wrap up, we encourage you to take the next steps in strengthening your security posture. Explore these key resources to continue your journey. WAF Security Assessment. Assess your application security readiness at aka.ms/WAF Security. Build a secure cloud foundation with the guidance at aka.ms/CAF for Cloud Adoption Framework. Learn how to implement Zero Trust principles at aka.ms/zero-trust. Get started with actionable security strategies at aka.ms/try-security. SaaS workload guidance at explore the best practices for securing your software as a service application at SaaS workload. We also value your feedback. Please take a moment to share your thoughts and help us improve future sessions by filling out our post-event feedback form on the QR code here. We will also drop some additional links related to this episode in the chat as well as the show notes, so feel free to check it out. Now you can see how we are innovating to secure AI and use AI for security, and how we are building out a platform which can protect your organizations end-to-end. I hope you are as inspired as I am for the possibilities of what you can do with all the innovations. Security is a team sport. I have so much optimism that with these innovations, we can build a safer world for all. Thank you.